Okay, so we're going to start on page 328, and this is kind of like a textbook expository text that we're going to be looking at. This isn't a story like The Dog of Pompeii. We did a lot of text structure, text features at the beginning of the year, and so now we are going to apply it using this packet. So your packets are going to be due on Monday because everybody will be here. It's going to be worth 50 points to make sure that you have your active reading in it. So Pompeii and Vesuvius, nonfiction excerpt. Now this word here, an excerpt, is part of a story. So it's not the whole thing. So this must come from a textbook, but there's more to it. So what's the connection? You've just read The Dog of Pompeii, a story that takes place on the day that Mount Vesuvius erupts and buries Pompeii in ash. Now you will learn more about this historical event and what the future may hold for those currently living in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. So when I read that, I didn't realize people, I don't know why, would still live there, but they do. So mountains can erupt multiple times, and so I think I would learn my lesson from Pompeii and maybe not live there, but people do. So skill focus, identify main ideas. What is a main idea in your own words? You guys should know this from English class and from past reading classes. What's the main idea? Right, what they focus on. So on page 313, you learned about theme. Now remember, theme is what? What's theme? It's the life lesson. The overall message that a fiction writer shares with readers. In nonfiction, so nonfiction is true, the most important idea that the writer communicates is called the main idea. You can often figure out the overall main idea of a selection by paying attention to smaller ideas developed in individual paragraphs or longer sections of the selection. To figure out the main idea of a paragraph or a section, try the following. Now, this will help you in English class. If you can identify the main idea in reading, you will be able to, when you write your stories, be able to create your own main idea if you know where it's at in the reading. So look at the subheading on page 329. For example, the subheading is Pompeii, the evidence. This should give you a good idea of what the section is about. So on page 329, right here, this is the title, and here's the subheading. Do you remember learning about those? We talked about the title and the subheadings. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So Logan, get out your packet. We're just going to finish this packet. So that's why we did this at the beginning of the year. Hopefully, as you've been going through the year reading textbooks, you have noticed that you do not skip anything in nonfiction because the purpose of nonfiction is to learn. Whoops, wrong page. So find the topic sentence or the sentence that states a paragraph's main idea. Now I know you've heard this in English class. The topic sentence is typically where the main idea is. The topic sentence is often, but not always, the first sentence in a paragraph. So usually, did you hear what I said? Usually, the main idea is found in the first sentence. It makes a statement that the rest of the paragraph supports. Sometimes it's found in the last sentence as well. But now that you know where the main idea is located, I'm sure this is all review. I'm sure your English teachers told you this. As you read the next two selections, use a chart like the one shown to list the main ideas of each selection. Note that In Search of Pompeii is broken into 3 sections. You will identify a main idea for each section. Now, we're not going to, if you want to come back and fill this in, that's fine, but since we're doing it together, we don't need to fill out that chart. So Pompeii, the evidence. And so remember, when we read titles and subtitles, that kind of gives us the idea of what it's going to be about. So I'm going to make a prediction. So the main idea of this paragraph is probably about, what obviously the evidence that they found probably tells them what life used to be like. And so let's read this. Much of our knowledge of Roman life comes from the evidence uncovered at Pompeii. That sentence there is very broad. It's not very specific. There aren't very many details in it. So that tells me that that could be the topic sentence or the main idea. If it is, then everything else will talk about life in Pompeii. Splendid houses, beautiful paintings, sculptures of bronze and marble, fine glass, metal, and pottery bear witness not only to a city that perished in one day, but also to a long vanished civilization. A visit to Pompeii is like entering a time machine. You can see wide streets still with the ruts cut in the paving stones by the wheels of chariots, the entrance to a shop with graffiti on the wall, beside it the baths and grand houses with their wall paintings and colonnade gardens. But above all, there are the people of Pompeii, overwhelmed as they tried to escape the horror that overtook their city. Across nearly 2,000 years, their twisted bodies are vivid witnesses of what happened on August 24th, AD 79. So do you agree? Do you think that's the topic sentence, the first sentence? See one head? Yep, I agree. Because remember, the main idea kind of is a broad, which means it's not very specific. Everything that's taught here goes along with the main idea. And so over here, what is the main idea of the first section? Look at the subheading in the first paragraph. Paragraph's topic sentence to help you identify it. Record this in your chart. Well, we've talked about it. So the next couple of pages is a picture or a diagram of the layout of the city of Pompeii. Remember, when you read nonfiction, don't skip over this stuff. Remember, we talk about captions, things that are under the pictures. Well, there's some captions here. We want to make sure that we read those. And over here it says informational text. This diagram shows the layout of Pompeii. How does this information enhance your understanding of the text? So I'm going to look at it real quick. Gladiator barracks. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe, but it's a great movie. So I know what a gladiator is. The government buildings, the Temple of Venus, and I know somewhat of Greek and Romans, and they believed in gods and goddesses and Temple of Jupiter, so that's what those are. The Vesuvian Gate, House of the Tragic Poet, the Central Baths, which were talked about in our story. Unexcavated, so I know that un means not, and the word excavated means to dig up. So they have not explored this part of the city, so it's still not uncovered. But down here, okay, they didn't uncover this either. And so I'm going to read, and I've already done that, the pictures and the descriptions that they have describing the baths, discussing the forum. We talked about that when we read. That was the gathering place. The Temple of Isis. Isis is also another god that they probably worshipped. And the amphitheater. And I think the amphitheater was in the story too. Okay. So the next page, as I look at it, I know that my reading teacher talked to me about how to read nonfiction. And so here's another subheading, and I make sure that I read that. Tells me what this paragraph is going to talk about. And so this probably tells me about, obviously, the day that the volcano erupted. And I want to find the topic sentence so I know what the main idea is. When the volcano Vesuvius erupted on August 24th, AD 79, it destroyed a rich and thickly populated part of southern Italy. We know this from the archaeological discoveries at Herculaneum and Pompeii. But more remarkably, we know what the disaster was actually like for the people who lived in the region. So What do you think? Which one do you think is the topic sentence? The first sentence or the last sentence? Some of us think it's the first. Okay. Let's keep reading, then we'll come back and see who's right. The young Roman nobleman Pliny the Younger witnessed the eruption and wrote a letter that is the earliest known account of such a tragedy. As people screamed and struggled to escape the horror, Pliny described the eruption as looking like a pine tree, for it shot up to a great height in the form of a trunk, which extended itself at the top into several branches. Main ideas. What is the main idea of this third section? Use the first paragraph's topic sentence to help you decide. Record the main idea in your chart. Composite volcano. A composite volcano is a cone-shaped volcano built up of layers of lava and layers of rock fragments. Composite volcanoes have violent eruptions for two reasons. First, expanding gases trapped in rising magma tend to cause explosions. Second, hardened lava from earlier eruptions often plugs openings in these volcanoes. This rock must be blown out of the way before any more magma can escape. During an eruption, volcanic gases can mix with rock fragments and stay near the ground. The mixture forms a pyroclastic flow, which is a dense cloud of superhot gases and rock fragments that race downhill. Now, as I'm reading that, I should be actively reading and marking it up. I see this word here, I don't know what that means, and that is a dense cloud with superhot gases and rock fragments that go downhill. Down here, the informational text, this reminds me of what I just said before I started reading. Cohen? Okay, tell me. Right, exactly. Very good, because Pliny described what it was like. So over here it says, according to this caption, what are the two reasons that composite volcanoes have such violent eruptions? And so hopefully you actively read that and probably wrote down, here's first and here's second, and I would say two reasons. And that way when I would go back to study, I would know where to look for that answer. Page 333. A survivor's letter. Ashes now fall upon us, though as yet not in a great quantity. I looked behind me. Gross darkness pressed up our rear and came rolling over the land after us like a torrent. Now I've heard this word before, and I know that means like a huge rush. Darkness overspread us, not like that of a moonless or cloudy night, but of a room when it is shut up and the lamp is put out. You could hear the shrieks of women, the crying of children, and the shouts of men. Some were seeking their children, others their parents, others their wives or husbands, one lamenting his own fate. And I know if you lament, you are sad. So I know that they're like just not in a good place. Another that of his family, many lifting their hands to the gods, but the greater part imagining that there were no gods left, and that the last and eternal night was come upon the world. So I'm going to look down here at this picture and read the caption above it. This description from Pliny the Younger's letter to Tacitus is as vivid now as when he wrote it almost 2,000 years ago. So here's another article about Pompeii. Italians tried to prevent a modern Pompeii. So this is the title. And so I know that, so this was in USA Today. So I know that, maybe, so here are some predictions before I read this. Perhaps the volcano, maybe the smoke, remember the guy in the story? Maybe the smoke is getting wider. And remember that was one of the things that the stranger noticed. Obviously, something is happening over there that is making them concerned and to watch what's going on. So, San Sebastian al Vesuvio, Italy. So that's where this takes place. That's the setting. Concerned that too many people now crowd the sides of the active volcano. Oh boy. Authorities here have launched a bold plan to prevent a repeat of the catastrophic explosion that wiped out Pompeii and smothered thousands of its residents nearly 2,000 years ago. Authorities hope to thin the ranks of residents so they can be evacuated when Mount Vesuvius erupts again. They are doing this by offering cash incentives to move, demolishing the illegal buildings that have sprouted on its flanks, and establishing a national park at its top. It's only a matter of time before the volcano does erupt, scientists say. It won't be tomorrow, it won't be next month, and maybe it won't be next year, but it is overdue, says Giovanni Macedonio, director of Vesuvius Observatory, the institute responsible for monitoring the volcano. When it blows, Macedonio warns, it could be with the power of tens of hundreds of atomic bombs. So as I'm reading this, here's a connection that I'm making. Maybe you have the same one. This reminds me of the stranger in the story we read. Remember, he tried to warn those people that live in there too? People don't change, do they? But do you see why it's important to read lots of things? Do you see, even though the Dog of Pompeii was a fiction story, I'm making a connection between that and something that is modern time. I'm learning from past mistakes. Even though it was a story, it's true. Those people didn't heed the warnings. And so F, I guess let's continue reading because F asked us down here. Vesuvius last erupted in 1944. Lava destroyed some orchards and homes, and 26 people were killed. Residents put pots on their heads to protect against rocks shooting through the air, but the rumblings soon stilled. Vesuvius has been quiet since. Oh, yeah, I would say it's kind of overdue. During the volcano's 60-year slumber, slumber means what? Very good. Slumber means to sleep. However, sprawl from nearby Naples has spilled out. Nearly 600,000 people now live in the 18 towns in the shadow of the volcano. F. What is the main idea of this article? Use the title and topic sentences to help you identify it. Wow. So what do you think do you think this whole first paragraph is the topic sentence? That's all one sentence. I think that's the whole topic sentence, right? Yeah. Because everything else talks about, you know, what the authorities have done to try and squelch people from living there. And so the last page, comprehension. According to the online article, how many people could be affected by an eruption of Mount Vesuvius today? We just read that. Remember, what was it, Logan? It was 600,000. Very good. Critical analysis, making inferences. Remember, that is the highest level of thinking. You use all your active reading skills to figure out what's going on. Reread the description of composite volcanoes on page 332. What part of the volcano's eruption might Pliny have been describing in his letter? So, you know what? When I read that, I knew immediately that I was going to have to go back to that page. You know why? Because I didn't actively read that, did I? I didn't mark that up too much. So, like, and I wasn't really paying attention. So I know my skills and my weaknesses. So I need to go back to that page because you can see there's no writing on this page. I don't remember anything about this diagram. And we want to read about composite volcanoes. Oops, 332. That was here. Okay. So I wasn't really, when I read it, I wasn't really actively reading. I wasn't trying to get it into my head. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the active reading. So a composite volcano is a cone-shaped volcano. All right, so I'm going to, that's a cone. Built up of layers of lava and layers of rock fragments. Composite volcanoes have violent eruptions for two reasons. So I'm going to put they're very violent. Do you see the difference between how I'm reading now and how I read it when we first went over it? This is why you actively read, so you don't have to go back and reread. But I did not, when I read this, I was just reading the words. I was not practicing active reading. I was not trying to remember this stuff. Now I know my purpose is I have a question and I need to know the difference. So I'm doing my active reading now. So they're very violent for two reasons. Expanding gases trapped in rising magma tend to cause explosions. So two reasons. The first reason, trapped gases. And the second reason, hardened lava from earlier eruptions often plug openings in the volcanoes. I don't know why I keep saying volcanoes. So lava hardens and plugs openings. I'm rephrasing. I'm putting it in my own words so I remember it. This rock must be blown out of the way before any more magma can escape. Huh. So I can see, like, I know, have you ever had like a thing of glue where the glue gets on top, it hardens, and it's got to come out first, and you can't dig it out, so you squeeze it, and all of a sudden it explodes, and what happens? The glue goes everywhere, right? And that's kind of like a composite volcano. During an eruption, volcanic gases can mix with rock fragments and stay near the ground. The mixture forms a pyroclastic flow, which is a dense cloud. Okay, so that's why they had all that. That's why they suffocated the people. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and answer this question and see if I can answer it better. Reread the description of composite volcanoes on page 332. What part of the volcano's eruption might Pliny have been describing in his letter? Explain using details from the text. Okay, so now I need to, in his letter, ashes now fall upon us, though as yet not in great quantity. I looked behind me, gross darkness pressed upon our rear. Oh, already I think I know the answer. What's the answer? What part of the explosion is he talking about? Can't hear you. Lava? Right. He's talking about, where's on the page go? He's talking about the pyroclastic flow, the dense cloud, the suffocation. Do you see the difference? How much easier that question was to answer after I actively read? Okay, so I know that some of you may think that active reading is a lot, but truly, if I would have done that the first time, I would not have gone back, or I would have gone back and looked at my notes, and my memory would have been triggered really quickly. All right, we do not need to do the rest of this because we are not doing the writing yet. So make sure that you guys have that all done. If your packet is done, if you kept up with it with the videos that are online, you can turn your packet into the wire basket. I will look at it. When you come Monday, if you don't turn it in today, you need to bring it to class completed. There will be no more class time for this packet. We will start a new story on Monday.